Friends, as I have a long conversation on serious issues every Saturday, this Saturday I am very happy to have an issue which affects all of us: our stock markets, our share market, the transparency in the market, and the scams in the market. To address that topic, I have the two best people in India who exposed the Harshit Mehta scam. And everybody who lived through 90s knows how big it was. And recently, you all have seen the web series based on their book, who did the scam, who got away, who got saved. And now they have come out with a new book, Absolute Power, on the NSE scam. So I am very happy to invite senior journalists who expose scams and who have been covering markets forever, Debasish ji and Sucheta ji. Thank you for taking out time and joining us.
Thank you so much, Ishkaran, for inviting us.
Thanks for inviting us.
So, when this scam, you covered the scam of Harshad Mehta, and I was reading some excerpts. You believe that the market would be transparent, things would improve, and we will now be in a very transparent market. But your book brings out that nothing much has changed, or not enough has changed. So, what has been your experience after that 92 scam happened? How did because audiences, a lot of laymen here. How did you see the market shifting after the Harshad Mehta scam, and what is the NSE coming into picture, and how it has developed? So, if Suchita ji first, and then Debashish ji.
Should I speak?
Okay. Yeah, please.
Go ahead, start.
Okay, so in 92, just before the Harshad Mehta scam happened, one of the things that was happening was a complete lawlessness in the Bombay Stock Exchange. Okay? There were constant broker defaults, settlements were being extended, they wouldn't get completed in 15 days. It was paper-based trading. So we were very, very happy that the Securities and Exchange Board of India, first of all, got its statutory teeth. Otherwise, as you know, it had been announced and nothing further was happening. They were not passing the act to make it a statutory body. So all this happened because of the scam. And, you know, the BSE still didn't understand the need for regulation. Okay? So they said, okay, the only way to check this is to create a competitive exchange, which was the NSE. It was supposed to be professional, and a good team of people headed by Dr. Arich Patil looked at different technology and frankly have done a marvelous job. Okay, NSE is the third largest exchange in the world today. So what it did for the first 10 years was outstanding, and that's what our book has described. In fact, our book has taken people through the whole history. We talk 25 years is, you know, the most life-changing years for the post-independence for India because of economic liberalization. And we've taken people through the path of what happened. But then ultimately, you know, absolute power, as the book says, leads to, you know, absolute corruption, hubris, whatever. And this time it was technology that was used. I think Debashish can talk about how, you know, technology was misused by NSE and what they did in recent years, 2015 in fact.
Debashish ji, before you, I want to have a basic question. So, from paper-based trading, because this is, as I said, a complete common man audience, which probably just buys through either mutual funds or they, if some of them are braver than that, they pick up shares themselves. So, what was the technological change which came into, and what was the rationale behind NSE, which you were saying the first 10 years were good? So, what was the good changes brought in, and how have they got corrupted by absolute power? So if you could cover both these points, please.
See, what as Sucheta mentioned very clearly, the stock markets were an absolute lawless place. This was, we are talking about early 90s, 80s, 90s, there. And in fact, the whole structure of the market was completely different. First of all, there were only 2 hours of trading. Okay, which seems very, very surprising today in global connectedness. There are international markets which are literally trading round the clock, except for a brief period. And on a Sunday, there are some Globex markets is trading all around the clock, around the year. So what used to happen is that the markets were completely controlled by brokers, the big brokers, and they were in Bombay, they were in Calcutta, they were in parts of Rajkot and Ahmedabad and so on. So So the common man really had a very hard time trying to figure out uh, where is the transparency, where are my shares coming from, how do I deliver, what is the information. Companies used to put up, sometimes they would not disclose. Today we are used to, within a 24 hours, company are supposed to disclose to Bombay Stock Exchange. You can go to this website, download the notices, you can see any market moving, important information have to be immediately disclosed. There's a governance rules in place. But there would be a situation where companies wouldn't disclose for anything. It's up to them. Notices were put up in Gujarati. So it's not that you could, if you were not part of the community, didn't speak the language, didn't read it, too bad, right? And BSc was the biggest. On top of all this, there was this huge scam which happened. It was not necessarily a stock market scam because it was fundamentally a bank scam. As you must have seen in the series, Harshad Mehta took money from State Bank of India and did not return. Didn't return, then it went to National Housing Bank to took the money to return. So it was essentially the bank side of it. It was under RBI. But the fact is that the stock prices were being manipulated with that money at will. And then there was a collapse in the market. People lost money. Ashok went to jail, and there are other people who were picked up for questioning. CBI came in. So at that point of time, when the scam happened, there was not enough proper securities legislation or regulation in place, right? All of these regulations that you're looking at today, which is mutual fund regulation, you're looking at depositories, you're looking at stringent broker regulations, you're looking at portfolio management service regulations. All of these came later, after that. So the scam really propelled the government at that time. Narasimha Rao was a prime minister. Manmohan Singh was a finance minister. They were battling, the problems of excesses of the previous years. India had to pledge gold in 1991 to save the country. So the aftermath of all that was happening, and then they are liberalized, right? In 1991, there were devaluation of rupee, 25% devaluation of rupee in July 91. So the impact was economic and other forces were happening, and on top of that happened the scam. So the government said, now for 2 years we have been telling the brokers, please register, please follow the regulations, and you've not been listening, and you will not listen because this, even previous reports of the 50s, 60s, 70s, government reports, even under the British, people talked about excessive speculation, market crash, people going bust, brokers defaulting, customers not getting paid. All of these things have been happening for decades today. Scam was a big boil. Thing really burst. So at that time, the government said enough is enough. And a team of policymakers in Delhi and in Bombay, they got together. The IDBI was a premier institution at that time. ICICI, IFCI, and IDBI. IDBI was the biggest. So a team from IDBI came and got together, and the government said that we need competition. We need professionally run exchange, following rules in a transparent manner, and most importantly, guaranteeing settlement, which means that if you make a transaction, if you paid for your shares, you will get your shares. If you sold your shares, you will get your money. So the sanctity of the market, which is settlement guarantee, that at the end of the settlement, you will know where you stand, and it will be fair on sides, on the buyer and the seller. That itself was not happening. They used to club settlements. It was a 14-day settlement. BSE used to club, no, not this fortnight, next fortnight, so 1 month. In 1 month, you don't know where your money is and where your share is. And anyway, everything was physical, right? So the government said this is not going to work, and we're going to set up a new exchange. And our book describes, and that part of the book is very, very fascinating, where we have described from the beginning how difficult it is, even though this was a group of people with government backing. So, Mantek Singh Ahluwalia and the Prime Minister, the SEBI chairman, the UTI, everybody was backing this group. And yet it was so extremely difficult for them to go through the various hurdles. Doing business in India is very difficult. Even for a government organization, it's about the same. So the customs would hold up things, and then the deadline was almost difficult to meet. After launching, how many problems were there? Institutions will not trade. Oh, you don't have liquidity, because ultimately institutions have to have buyers and sellers in the market. They may be, paying lip service. They may have invested in capital, but they have to buy and sell in a market which is liquid. BSE was more liquid. So then you had to lobby with them, please put through some trades, all of these. So they were very hurdled. But that was a fascinating part of the story of how NSE got set up, which you must read the book to know, because that is really something India should be really proud of that original team led by Dr. Patil, how they managed to do this with complete dedication and professionalism, and then how within a year and a half, they beat BSE and then started growing very fast. So that was a background.
So, Sucheta ji, when did, as you said, as has been explained, it is a phenomenal achievement with a team of dedicated people who set up a parallel system, and it all appeared to be going very well. So, when do you think the first, if not corruption, the first deviation and deviances started coming into the system, and when were they noticed? Were they noticed by the government when they started coming? Or was it noticed way later when you got into it, or was there some? How did the entire process go of that, the deviations and how the manipulation started?
See, over a period of time, it was very clear that NSE had become so powerful that it had got into the mode where we talk about regulatory capture, where the regulated entity is so in a position to do so many favors to people, especially the political class, that it is completely captured the regulator. So there were people, for instance, from government and from the finance ministry, which used to come on deputation. It had enormous marketing budgets. So it controlled the media because of the ads that it could give. Then it had people, from SEBI who were under its thumb. And, the finance ministry at that time was clearly almost like a nice equation between the finance ministry and NSE, to the point that SEBI was irrelevant. They didn't even need to go to SEBI anymore. And bit by bit, they were crushing competition. So whether it was BSE, so we have described in the book about how, BSE was about to tie up with NASDAQ. So in the initial days, BSE did not understand, what change is going to happen with regulation, but they caught on. I mean, the brokers were smart. So when they were about to tie up with NASDAQ, and they would have gotten that technology, NASDAQ was one of the biggest exchanges in the world. Overnight, there was a press release issued which said that no foreign exchange could have more than 5%. And, this just sort of NASDAQ deal fell through overnight. Even NSE was supposed to have a shareholding from the New York Stock Exchange, and NYSE wanted a much larger stake. So, in fact, this killed two birds with one stone, because NYSE agreed to take just 5%. Then you had the other competition, MCX started, and we have described a series of things that NSE did, which was so outrageous that if you had a functioning regulator, which should have done the job of creating a level playing field, none of this would be allowed. In fact, every single time we have said that the regulator, which was set up in 92 specifically for capital market, because you didn't want to burden the legal system with things that required very strong technical knowledge. Instead of handling the issues, the regulator instead was going and just keeping quiet. So people had to go to the Competition Commission, they had to go to the Bombay Stock Exchange, go to the Supreme Court. High Court and to the Supreme Court. So the question that we are asking was SEBI necessary at all if this is how outrageously it would keep quiet and silent? It was a captured regulator. Obviously, when you enjoy this kind of power, you get away with it. We have described situations where whether there was a fat finger trade or whether there were, problems, brokers were doing some mischief in the market. SEBI would do an investigation. At the end of it, a serious investigation would end in a whimper with them saying, okay, we give a warning to NSE not to do this again. When this happens repeatedly, NSE thinks it's larger than life, right? It's above regulation. So I think when the co-location happened, they did not even bother to take permission.
we've actually
If
described
you
a
could
whole lot of...
explain some of, sorry, if you could explain some of these terms, fat finger trade or co-location, so that it's more.
Let me step back a little
A little bit of technical jargon, if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me step back a little bit. After that Harshad Mehta scam happened in 1992, there's another scam that happened later, which is around 2001. This is after the dot-com boom and, then the collapse of all the tech stocks and so on and so on. Now, at that stage itself, there was a bit, to investigate, there's a joint parliamentary committee was set up. Right? The joint parliamentary committee described what went wrong. And one of the things that went wrong is a particular mechanism which both BSE and NSE had. In NSE, the mechanism was called advanced lending and borrowing mechanism. It's basically you borrow against shares and and somebody lends. So Reliance was a big lender, and there used to be other people borrowing. Now, if you go through the papers of that time, you will notice that this system that NSE launched was launched without regulatory approval. This is towards the end of 99. This is quite remarkable because exchange business is highly regulated. This is not like, starting a fast food joint. It's not like, business of selling shampoo. You can't do you can do what you want to over there, provided, the shampoo doesn't harm people and so on. But you are relatively loose. This is a very tightly regulated situation where every step you have to get approvals. If there's this new scheme or a new sort of product launch or whatever, you can't just go ahead and do it, right? And you would see, and I would say that all of these things that we described in the book later, which is co-location scam or later, this was the first time, and this came out later. At that time, these were all hidden because they were all internal papers. I would say this is the first time when you could figure out that from 94 to 99, 5 to 6 years of running, and the original managing director would step down, Dr. Patil would step down and become a director, and and his deputies became this was the first time where you would notice an amazing deviation, that they could think of this and they could go ahead with this, showed remarkable disdain for regulation, according to me. That was the first sign. But all of this came out later, not when the JPC report was released and all of these things, much later, after the scam, not in the beginning. Then in 2005, NASDAQ happened.
The voice froze, I think. It's frozen.
Debasish froze.
Yeah, in 94 when NSE was launched, and this we are talking about 5 to 7 years. Somewhere along the way, although these people were very high profile at that time, was a managing director Ravi Narayan and deputy MD Chitra Ramakrishna, for whatever reason they felt that they can't, nobody can point a finger at them. Nobody should point a finger at them. They are perfect. The institution is perfect. Everything they do is correct. And if there is no rule, then that is not their problem, because what they're doing is correct. So it's okay if there's no rule. The rule will come later, or the market will adjust to us, and so on and so on. So the same thing happened in 2010 when they first launched what is called algorithmic trading or co-location. What happens in this case is institutions, big institutions, are able to put in their servers inside the exchange. Okay. So they don't, a big institution are not like us. They are not calling a broker and placing an order. That used to happen earlier. Now what is happening, and this is a system we borrowed from the US, is that they can place an order directly ahead of anybody else, because they have a fast direct line and they have a server there, and the server is connected to the exchange. So everybody has his own servers. This is why it's called co-location. I'm locating my server along with the others in the same place. What it does is they get a fractional advantage before anybody else to put this trade. Now, you are looking at let's say you want to buy Reliance. The price is to 2020 to 1.50 and 1.75, let's say, buy sell. Okay, they can what with the fast servers and the links, they can jump the queue, see the orders, and hit an order before you can. Okay, and any average person can also notice this. You see, if you are doing trading yourself, you will notice sometimes that you put in a quote, and suddenly there is another quote above you, which is 25% better. So somebody is able to see it and able to jump. Who is able to see it? The algorithmic traders. They have written a code saying that if somebody comes at this price, add 25 paisa and put in my code. And because they are faster, they are able to do that. And nobody has to do it manually. It's all automated. It's completely automated across hundreds and hundreds of shares, stocks. A program has been written that I should be the best quote. If anybody is as this price, add 25 paisa and add 10 paisa and I should be the best. Right? So this is what was happening. Now, this is okay. This is normal. This is not fair. That is another story. But we have accepted this. Globally, this is accepted. India, it's accepted. It's fine. What happened in case of NSE is that there were people within co-location who could log in first, and because NSE had a poor technology, they cut cost and got a poor technology. They allowed people to log in first, and if you log in first, you get the best prices, right? Which should not happen normally in a broadcast mode. Everybody should get the same price. Exchange is a place for fairness. Exchange is a place to create an equal platform. And exchange should never be a place to game the system. It's like, suppose you are standing in a queue and somebody comes in front of you and gets into the bus and you're left hanging. So it's a very crude example, but something similar. Why? Because somebody has allowed this. NSE refused to accept. How did this come out? This came out because a whistleblower sent a letter to Sucheta. Okay, this was sometime in early 2015. She made her inquiries, etc., and then she wrote an article. Sucheta, you want to take over from here? I've been talking.
You have a question, or should I continue?
I have a slight question. So basically what I understand is what you are saying is between a normal trader, supposing I was to do trading, and these big institutions, there is a accepted pattern of these big institutions getting slightly faster information, and that's a practice accepted all over the world because of economies of scale or whatever reason. The problem you're saying is within these big institutions trading on algorithm, some were getting information even slightly faster. This reminds what one used to hear about 90s Sharjah betting scandal, where because the television satellite, there was slight gap, so people who would place bets there would get a microsecond advantage if a person has gotten out or a 4 has happened. So those used to happen in 1990s, early 90s, and the entire Sharjah betting scandal. So something similar, obviously much faster speeds.
It is a little worse because in this case, the exchange itself facilitated this rather than it happening because of the satellite. Now you go ahead.
Yeah, so it's almost identical. It's a perfect example to explain this, except that these servers are in the exchange and all these people are paying huge fees. And when we talk about shares, trades happening in micro and milliseconds, it is hundreds of crores of transactions that are in this throughput, right? So when somebody is allowed to log in first, and it's such a scandal because when this whistleblower wrote this, it sounded rather fanciful. Then we began to investigate. We talked to people. When I talked to people, there's some people actually from Dubai who came to our office and, had a big discussion and told us that, yes, this and worse is happening. So we were fairly convinced now that the whistleblower's letter, actually, the letter is in the public domain. It is so detailed. It's very clear that this is a guy who's on the inside and who knows. And he's named names, he's named the broking firm. But NSE was so confident, this is like a black box of an aircraft, okay? the only access to the black box is NSE. So all the trades are happening there. The server farm is in there. Who else knows it? Not even SEBI. Even SEBI has to ask for information. So NSE was so confident that they decided that we will shut her up. So the focus was shut her up, let her not write. So they went and filed a defamation suit for 100 crores because they were very sure that nothing in that black box of the NSE can get out. They control the finance ministry, is what they thought. But of course, their friend, the finance minister, had changed by that time. They had full control over SEBI. I think what happened is, one is hubris, and they got the timing all wrong. So they were very certain that with their legal power, they would steamroller us in court, get an injunction to shut us up. Rest of the media, they were giving ads in any case. They would have ensured through their marketing departments that nobody writes anymore. And they would have said, this is scurrilous journalist, she's defamed us, end of the story. But several things went wrong. And this is where I'm a strong believer that sometimes it's like fate or karma. It's, or what we say, Vinash Kale Viprit Buddhi. You do all the wrong things at the wrong time. So we had, first of all, help. You helped us, I remember, with Dr. Swamy to sort of make a case. Dr. Swamy actually came and, asked us if we need help. We were so touched, that this out of the blue phone call. So that was first, which gave us a huge boost because we couldn't have afforded the defamation case and the fees. The second thing was the judge, who, refused to be impressed by NSE. He said, don't pretend you're clean as driven snow. You were given an opportunity to reply, why didn't you? So I'm not giving a stay order. When that happened, I think SEBI began to get some courage. And remember, their friend in the finance ministry was no longer in charge. So SEBI at least began to make the right noises and an investigation started. The next most important thing was that SEBI's technical advisory committee was the body which could have asked questions, and they were people with technical knowledge who would understand. Now, as our luck would have it, Professor Ashok Jhunjhunwala of IIT Chennai was heading this. Earlier, there was somebody else. And he is such an upright, no-nonsense man who understands what was going on. So once he got in, he said, I'm sorry, he looked at the letter and exactly, I think like the judge, he realized this is not, a wishy-washy letter which is making wild allegations against people. So he demanded data. He got a team. In fact, because they couldn't find people who were not either connected with NSE one way or the other, even the academics, he went to IIT Powai, found two people from the computer department who would do an independent assessment, and one by one they began to confirm. So there were at least, I think, 5 different people who confirmed what was there in the letter and which was investigated. So that's how slowly it began to unravel. And then, what we realized is it's not one broker in Delhi who was getting an advantage. There were half a dozen others, including one which was connected to Cafe Coffee Day. So there were many more, and the number of rules that NSE had broken, that also began to come out because for the first time, this black box had been opened for scrutiny by innumerable experts who were looking into it. So repeatedly, it was coming out and saying 2 things. One, NSE refuses to cooperate. NSE is not giving data. And yes, from what we have seen, it corroborates what the whistleblower has said. The whistleblower, in the meanwhile, also wrote a second letter and a third letter giving more details, which, we used right to information. We ensured it went to the finance ministry. So I think by then, SEBI was realizing that it couldn't bury this under the carpet, and the investigation got more serious.
Absolutely. Still, I remember that case, that 100 crore was a big case. And remember, we were working, Dr. Swamy told me, was only that a journalist covering something cannot be shut down, and that was the issue. But the bigger issue of how they were doing it, so it was a cartel within a big institution, because you're saying it was not one broker getting benefit. It was some 10, 12 or whatever the number of brokers. So, but then if it was so visible that if 10, 12 people are getting benefits, why were the other big institutions who were not getting the benefit not raising a stink, because they were losing money in real time?
In fact, they were. So, what came out was that every time they were using what is called a dark fiber. Dark fiber is, why was it that one broker OPG was able to link faster? Because they would tell him that this server has less load, so you will get the data faster, right? So somebody inside the NSE was colluding with him, and he was constantly able to log into that data earlier. Now, when the brokers began to realize that this is not the quality of the algorithm, but that they were getting faster access, they began to complain. And they said that we are going to go public with it. So even when we have talked later about this dark fiber link that was done through Sampark, and some brokers got hold of it, the connection with Cafe Coffee Day, that Alpha Grep company. They got it mainly because there are letters that they have said that you either give us the same connection or we are going to go public. So the other people came in literally by arm twisting NSE.
But that also took a lot of courage, because in general it was known that NSE is the place where you do the trading. So it is a single place, right? It's not that if they don't cooperate or if they shut you down, it's not that you can go somewhere else. You need NSE. You're a broker. And NSE has been known for the last 15 years to be extremely high-handed with brokers. In certain cases, where let's say NSE is equally to be blamed as much as the broker, NSE would tell the broker, shut up, or take the blame. We don't want to get out. So that in the entire broking circles, everybody knew how high-handed NSE is, and yet it is the largest. You need it. You are only a broker. They are a well-known international, institution, and a platform you would need. So this cribbing, all the complaining also had come about only after a long time continuously suffering. And there are emails. In fact, in all of these cases, when the investigation happened and the reports were prepared, they have quoted actual emails, people complaining, saying that, listen, you're not replying to us, so-and-so is getting an advantage. What about our case? These kind of email exchanges are there over there. And it's only, as I said, it's only to that extent a broker is able to do.
It's a monopoly. It's basically a monopoly. You give them put up or shut up or get out.
And a regulator. It's also a first-line regulator. It is not subject to RTI. It is not listed. Everything is behind closed doors. And over a period of time, when it's so clear that SEBI does not have the guts to discipline it, Finance Ministry is on its side, a joint secretary is behaving like the SEBI chairman. So which broker would have the courage to speak up?
True. So then after this came out, have there been some changes? What has happened after that, or they are still after all this came out? What has been the situation now?
Shall I, or they were you?
So on that, there are two parts to it. The algo scam part anyway was fixed, because they had a new chief technology officer who was very upright, and he says all these rickety systems, this is the reason why you having this. I'm shifting to a better system, synchronizing the clocks so that people don't even get a fractional advantage. All the computer clocks, everything should be synchronized, which should have been a standard operating procedure. This is a world-class exchange. If the clocks are not synchronized, you can imagine what the situation is. In fact, even in one of the report, repeatedly in the reports of this investigation, they have said we can't provide emails because we do not have a data retention policy. Exchange is one of the most high-tech areas of operations. It's real time. It's the world's third largest exchange. And can you imagine that exchange saying that we do not have a data retention policy? This is like a joke. So in any case, that the new CTO, Umesh Jain, he fixed all of that. So by the time we were writing, a lot of things had already got fixed. And then SEBI was onto their case, and the TSC, the Technical Advisory Committee, was onto the case. So the algo part was getting better and better and better, and people had less of complaints. On the overall administration, governance of the exchange, I mean, nothing much has changed, and I'll leave Sucheta to discuss that.
Yeah, see, on the overall administration is a bit of a joke, okay? Because first you have SEBI, which has punished them. So it punished the previous management. So the MD, the vice chairman, Ravi Narayan Chitra, who were there for a long time, they had some extraordinary appointments, like the group operating officer was from a travel agency who neither had technical knowledge nor regulatory experience, nor did he understand exchanges. But he was appointed as a group operating officer and called the shots in the exchange. He had to go. So that kind of cleanup happened. Okay. But it continues to be unlisted. It has gone in appeal against all of what SET has done. If you ask us, I think that 1,000 crore disgorgement is a small penalty given the kind of profitability NSE has. But they know that in our legal system, which is slow, you can buy time and drag things. So it remains unlisted. So all the earlier problems, which are a recipe for disaster, that you're unlisted, there's no sunlight, there is no RTI, nobody, investors are not watching what you do, that continues. The shocking thing is that in the last, from 2020-21, in the middle of the pandemic, you have 1 crore new demat accounts being opened, new investors have come to the market, and you have 22 defaults that have happened, okay, broker defaults, which shows you poor regulation, right? Poor supervision by the exchange. In fact, when BSE was condemned and we professionalized it and brought SEBI, there were similar just about 20 defaults. Now there are 22. SEBI is completely silent. If we demonized BSE so much in 1991-92 because of defaults, why is it that NSE is still so profitable, glorified, no action, and complete silence from the regulator? Not a word. Only I am ranting about it. And people who have lost thousands of crores, whether it's Karvi, it's Anugrah, it's BMA, it's Modex, I mean, 22 of them, okay? Not a word from the regulator. It always wakes up after the fact. Some little action, no change in the NSE. Several of the old senior officers continue, no change in risk management or risk assessment. Nothing has changed. And it remains highly profitable. It's business as usual.
That's a scary summary. If the changes haven't come, which should have come, and you're saying 22, I am not much invested in share markets, so it's not my subject, but 22, if they have collapsed and there has not been a thorough inquiry and investigation and a cleanup, that's then just some disaster waiting to happen. Looks like that.
Absolutely, because they already had one technical failure. There was a huge glitch, and there was trading stopped almost the entire day. Even that investigation, it's months now. We don't know what happened. Some people think that there may have been a sort of terror attack, virus, whatever. All this we don't know. Yeah, the China thing. But we don't know. There's no answers. And everything just gets buried. And that unfortunately continues. So, we are not saying destroy the exchange. It's done a good job. You have to regulate it, right? The capital market regulator has been set up for that purpose, and it has to come out. And in fact, SEBI spoke out that day, gave a press release which was factually wrong and pro NSE, even on that day. So with all this algo scam behind it, I think it should be taken a lot more seriously by the finance ministry, because finally the buck stops there. And God help us if there is a second problem. The finance minister said, I hope this is not going to happen again, and I'm going to talk to people. But what next? I mean, we are in the middle of a pandemic, all right. But do we have any guarantee it won't happen again?
Well, thank you so much for explaining the issue. And everybody, please go and read the book and read it in depth. All of you who invest in markets, even if you do not, transparency in big institutions is important. And everybody, in either through mutual funds or some way or the other, is nowadays increasingly invested in the market. So please do that. Any last words, Debasish or Sucheta ji, you want to say?
I have a point to make, which is that we can sit and lament about all of this, but ultimately all of us have to realize that we need to demand for change, okay? Because, we talk about 92. I mean, at that time, it was George Fernandez, I remember, thundering on the floor of the Lok Sabha. Now, today, while we talk about such a big exchange, look at the size of trading, markets are covered so much more, yet not a word from any member of parliament on what is going on. The finance minister, this one, I don't know whether it's a plus or a minus. Earlier, Chidambaram, even when the market blipped a little bit, would come out and be making a statement, which was overdone. But today, not being interested at all is another extreme. And I think traders need to realize Because with algo and co-location, you are not even at the station when the algo guys have reached the destination. If you don't ask for a fair play and these broker defaults happen, what kind of risks are you taking? So that my thing is demand some action. Devo, you have anything?
I will just take one, if you don't mind, one or two questions. Somebody is saying, as a rare investor, what can we do to make them NSE, SEBI more accountable? Raise your voice, I guess, but anyways, it's a question to you.
Yeah, but raise your voice with whom? I think you need to raise your voice with the people you have voted to the parliament. So call your MP and say that this is what I've read in Money Life. Is this true? And what is this situation? We demand answers. So unless you put pressure on the people who represent you in a democracy, things are not going to happen on their own, because there are too many vested interests with too much of money to stifle the people from doing the right thing. See, it is extraordinary that even today, as we mentioned, as Sucheta mentioned, that on the day the NSE trading stopped, just about a couple of months ago, almost the whole day, there were so many failures on that day. Failures in terms of protocol, what should have happened and didn't happen. At the end of the day, SEBI issued a press release supporting NSE. What was the need? So you are, in fact, rather than disciplining, you are sending an absolutely wrong signal. And the press release was a false press release. It stated, what it stated was factually incorrect. It said that interoperability was working. I mean, technically speaking, that between NSE and BSE, it should be interoperable, which means that you can trade here and get settled there. That failed. And the press release said that it worked. So this is such a blatant case of taking it up with a member of parliament and asking for an explanation on the floor of parliament. That's the first thing. And the only, with our 35 years of experience, we know that the only thing that regulators respond to are questions in the parliament, nothing else. We can bark as much as we want to. Nothing is going to happen. Even if Times of India barks, nothing is going to happen. They don't care.
All right.
But they reply to it.
Yeah, let's hope that then they take it seriously, because it's everybody's interests involved. Thank you so much, Debasish ji. Thank you so much, Sucheta ji, for taking out time.
Pleasure.
Thanks for having us.